Hey, it's Robert Clickybeard, the host of the Commercial Landscaper podcast. These podcasts challenge you to grow as a leader, to stretch yourself beyond your comfort zone, and to 10x your company. I really encourage you to enjoy the show, share it with teammates, fellow business owners, and subscribe. That helps us grow our community. This podcast is sponsored by BUM Data, helping commercial landscapers turn labor data into smarter decisions with intuitive, actionable analytics. Check them out if you're ready to control your labor costs and boost your margins. When you mention Wilson T60, you'll get 1 month free subscription to check out this amazing software. I'm just Robert Clickybeard with the Commercial Landscaper podcast. Really excited today to be joined by Chuck Monico. Chuck, nice to see you.
Robert, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm excited. We were just chatting offline here, and you've got an amazing story, and really excited to dive into it today. So for our audience, I'd love them to hear your background and just your story.
Probably not a atypical journey into this industry. And I started just doing a little lawn mowing, needed a couple extra bucks when I was a young guy in grade school. And so you would take off the mower and you make a few extra bucks. Kept that going during high school and during college. I had a couple other folks run the business for me. I spent a couple years in public accounting and had a couple people keep the business going at that point. And so like a lot of folks, I just got the bug to go back outside from what started as a mowing and fertilizer and light cleanup type of company. We grew into the landscaping and hardscaping and irrigation and water features, and continued doing that for nearly 25 years until January 1, 2022, we joined Ryan Lawn and Tree and we became their Omaha branch. 25 years grew the company to 7.5 million, about 50 associates or so in Omaha. And we had been looking for a transition plan. I had felt that, having a business can tie you down, whether you want to believe that or not, right? I mean, I think everybody says they own a business, right? You say, hey, if you're going to be real honest, you're tied to the business. 100%. And, didn't know it. I felt that it may be a good time to go ahead and just, relinquish the ownership and what, maybe God's calling me to something else. So 2016, 17, our leadership team, I should say, in Omaha started talking about, what might that look like? Of course, these are scary topics, but we were honest about it. We thought, what, we're profitable enough we may be able to go ahead and look at an ESOP. And so I started going down that path of building a team out to form an ESOP. When it was my company, looked like we were going to go that route, but something happened in between. And the thing that happened in between was in 2017, we joined up with the Great Game of Business to go ahead and promote financial literacy within our company. I'm sure you're familiar with those folks over there and their models, right, Robert? Right. So we got into that. And as we were getting ready to launch, it was about 6:30 in the morning. At least that's the way I tell the story. And my phone's ringing and it's Larry Ryan. And I haven't seen him for a while and talked to him for a while, but that's the way he rolls. He's been up for 3 hours at that point, probably. So 6:30, he calls and I answer the phone. He says, "Hey, Chuck," he says, "we're talking to these folks at Great Game of Business and they say you're getting into it and tell us about that." And so basically they enter about a year after we do. Ryan Lawn and Tree and CM's Outdoor Solutions Group started to connect again on a more regular basis and started talking about what it might be to bring Ryan Lawn and Tree into Omaha. And I got to tell you, right, all things being equal, I had already worked with folks, like I said, in the ESOP space to go ahead and build the team out to bring the ESOP to CMs. But all things being equal, joining Ryan, who at that time was 55, 60 million, and to be able to go ahead and jump into the benefits and the opportunities and growth and advancement, and plus just the scale of the ESOP was really a difference maker and a game changer for our associate pool. They were able to join something so much bigger with so much more opportunity. That's what we chose to do. We vetted it for about a year. Our leadership teams worked together, try to see around as many corners as possible, and the transaction occurred. And so last year, the team members that were still on staff from the original transition, about 40 folks altogether, and the value of the ESOP statements was around $450,000.
Wow.
First year. And so I tell you what, that made you feel good. Our people felt good about it. Certainly my wife and I felt great about it. And, from that standpoint, mission accomplished. And so that was a huge win. And then there's been some transition at Ryan Lawn and Tree, and Larry, I think, it's been pretty widespread news that Larry, the founder of Ryan Lawn and Tree, who built it from his garage, no different than how a lot of us start, to what was $82 million last year, has stepped aside, and I have transitioned into the CEO role of Ryan Lawn and Tree. So there's a little bit of a bio on me, and then yet to be determined what's next.
Nice. That's awesome. A lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, that's right. We're not standing still right now.
So many questions I could ask you here. I suppose starting off with, for people who, maybe fairly young in the landscape business, they're thinking, what is an ESOP?
Yeah, that's right. What is an ESOP? Why would you put those four letters together? So we talk about, employee stock ownership programs of what an ESOP. So there's about 7,000, maybe 6,500, 7,000 in the United States. It is not a widely used form of ownership. It was put together, if you go back, I think I might not get these dates exactly right, but think 1974, and then think bipartisan agreement. And then that's where people's heads explode, because, that's not going to happen in 2025. But, folks got to the table on both sides of the aisle. They, for different reasons, liked the model and said, hey, this is something we might want to give business the opportunity to do. And what they said is that, if you're willing to go ahead and give your employees 100% ownership, which would be, share the profits. No one wants to share the losses, but you're right, you want to share the profits, is that we'll make these things tax-free entities. And so in all cases, right, they're not taxed at a federal rate, and in most states they are not taxed as well. So they are completely tax-free when it comes to income taxes, which then, right, allows the business to have that money for reinvestment, whether it be acquisitions or, new equipment, lines of business. But primarily what they're hoping for, right, is that it's going to go ahead and go flow to those associates, which in most well-run ESOPs, that is exactly what's going to happen. So you'll just see larger retirement accounts between 401ks and ESOP plans. In a nutshell, amazingly, yeah, we had some bipartisan legislation.
That's unheard of these days.
Passed. It's resulted in a real windfall. Maybe differently. It's not for everyone to really let the reins off and be generous with your associates, but it works really well if you do that.
Why do people not talk about this enough? You hear about the M&A space and all the different options of private equity, strategic buyers. We had Matt Bradbury on a few weeks ago, and just giving all the options out there, but very few people talk about the ESOP option, because when I start hearing tax benefits, to me that seems really attractive. But why people talking about it?
Yeah, it makes your head snap a little bit when you first hear about it. And one is the folks there aren't a lot of ESOPs in our industry, so let's go ahead. You start with that, and then you say the fact there's only 6,500 or 7,000 in the United States. So to some extent, it really is a numbers game. There are national organizations that are doing a pretty good job in the ESOP space, but again, specific to our industry, it's just a numbers game. So, one thing that we're trying to do is get involved a little bit more at the national level, do some speaking on the circuit to go ahead and promote it within the industry. It takes a mindset, I guess I would say, Robert. And one is, you're not always going to get, I'll just say it, if you're going to go ahead and match a PE dollar up against an ESOP dollar, they're probably not going to be the same dollars. So it takes a certain mindset of someone who says that I am going to put my associates ahead of me to some extent. And that's not to say, to put Larry and I and others with ESOPs in a different space, but there really is some truth to that, because it's going to be a hard run with ESOPs running up against PE money. And there's a space for both, right? So everybody's got a different way and a different transition plan, but sometimes it's just pushed aside because it may pay a fair amount, but it may not pay, some of the multiples that you're seeing today. But when it comes to saying what is going to be the best chance for that person out there right now who's doing a great job serving your client as a turf route manager or a pruning trainee, or maybe they're out doing a fantastic job mulching for you today. And if you look at it and say, I'd sure like to spread the wealth, and I don't know how many other ways that person, if they just do a great job for the next 30, 40 years and they have some, natural advancement through the company and they get a reasonable, raise on a reasonable cadence, how else am I going to help that person have financial independence at their retirement? hard to see that
No.
path through private equity. But I can see it through ESOP because I'm living it here at Ryan, and I've seen it at other ESOP companies. So these people do a great job. They'll retire after, 30, 40 years, whatever it is, and they will leave with 7-figure retirement accounts.
Let's take a minute to thank our sponsors. Urcher is a life brand born from grit, founded by Zach Strausser. The mission is clear: to raise $1 million for the trades by supporting vocational training across North America. Urcher makes tough, smart gear built for landscaping and snow professionals who work hard outside every day in all conditions. Their apparel puts safety first, helps crews look sharp, and honors the pride in their craft. Every purchase has purpose, fueling training programs and building a resilient workforce. Urcher isn't just workwear, it's a culture of respect, resilience, and results. When you contact Urcher, mention Wilson 360 and Zach and his team will take well care of you. I mean, what level of person do you give that opportunity? Is there different criteria for different companies in terms of either tenure or certain management level? How do you determine that criteria?
So this is a beautiful thing. If you go back to, again, how does something like this get passed through Congress? They wouldn't let something through that was heavily weighted. That would have been that would have got through. So what happens is, in this case, the entire associate pool, the person needs to work for 1,000 hours a year. So at least a firm part-time associate, and then they're eligible, and they have to be 18 years of age or something like that. But you cannot slice and dice the associate pool to weight this to the senior side. There's different ways that you can allocate shares, but there has to be a degree of consistency, and anything that is weighted heavily towards senior management would be challenged by the government and ERISA governs, the same management system in the government that governs your 401k and retirement accounts is going to govern your ESOP as well. And so, some people think that, well, geez, how is it valued and who's watching this thing? And, is it for real? Well, it's actually heavily governed. So there's not a lot of play in the system. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
I heard the story or comment made on another green industry company that was on an ESOP program. And one of the comments I heard was that there was a general feeling of being cautious about investing in whatever that may be, whether it be new technology or some other bigger investment where, there was a lot more people that had that say and they didn't necessarily have that entrepreneurial type of mindset. What's your thoughts on that comment I heard?
So you're saying that the ESOP may be a little bit more conservative in the way they look at investments. That's the way I'm understanding that comment correctly, right?
Yeah. Maybe, typical business owners, they go through those highs and lows of being a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get people that perhaps have not been part of that entrepreneurial journey that now maybe have a piece of the pie, maybe they're more cautious with making investments in the company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's probably, part of that. I bet you see this as you talk to companies and consult with them. Part of it is company culture, right? And so if, leadership is unreasonably conservative or timid and not taking opportunities, that'll start to go ahead and trickle down through the organization. And if you're 22 and getting into this industry and that's what you see, then, that's what you're going to go ahead and know. So part of that, I think, is really, company culture. So, in our case, we don't have unlimited money, so we need to be calculated in what we do. But I don't think I would consider Ryan Lawn and Tree or some of the other ESOPs that I am aware of, at least the ones we're talking to, I would not categorize them as, more conservative in risk taking than any other organization. So I think,
Right.
If you've got a culture that has good business acumen, then that culture will continue to perpetuate itself unless someone throws it, off kilter. So yeah, we don't. Yeah. So I just would have to say that's probably a cultural thing. I don't see that here.
Yeah, and this comment came about one particular company, so I just thought it'd be interesting to bring it up. But talk in terms of decision making with making investments investments? I mean, is there any difference in terms of, do you have like a leadership team that makes that type of strategic plan, make those types of decisions, and then communicate, cascade that down around the company? Hey, this is what we're doing. So there's more communication and where we're going.
Yeah. Very, a very typical. So the ESOP, the company structure, it can be an S corp, it can be a C corp. ESOP, the decision making, and this is great because this is a point that comes up too, and people don't understand. Like, well, geez, do I need to, do I need to vote if we're going to buy toilet paper, and what kind is it going to be, and are we going to buy it on Monday or Tuesday, or are we going to Sam's or Costco? It's not like that. So the leadership structure is still very typical of what you would see in any other business, and the decision making as well. What you like to do, and this is getting back to more of GGOB, EOS, and other types of financial literacy learning programs that people are embedding in their companies to go ahead and teach people how to be good business people. That's where you probably get the most bang for your buck on decision making. And if you can continue to coach those things at a department and supervisor level, so those folks in the organization can go ahead and cascade that down to their team leads and their teams, that's where I think you're going to go ahead and see the wins on the day-to-day decision making. People, that's on the business side. If you go all the way to the ownership side, on the ESOP side, it's probably really important to have a strong ESOP committee. And I'd say that's something that it's probably ebbed and flowed. It takes effort. And so I'd say, Ryan, that's something that we could probably, we've done better in the past and maybe can improve on right now. So we'll be working on that. But for folks to understand the value of the employee stock ownership program, how does it really work? And the fact that the company is going to go ahead and allocate shares, and you are watching a stock price grow that is, given a valuation by a third party company on an annual basis. And just like anything else, right, as the stock price grows and the number of shares in your account grows, your account balance grows. And again, all those things done and given to the associate, they're not putting anything into it. They're putting their good effort and their good work into it every day, which we would expect of all associates in any company. And as you continue to do that, your account balance grows. It's a company given benefit. Trying to coach that, trying to teach that is that's a challenge. And you can't do it one day or 1 year or when they walk on in the orientation and say that's good enough.
You touched on this earlier, talk about the financial literacy, you use the great game of business, and I'd love you just to touch on that for a minute. But, here we are, we're sitting mid-March, and there's obviously a lot of turmoil in the markets right now. The stock market's pretty crazy right now. People get scared by that. It's very emotional and have an emotional reaction to that. Talk through how you're using the great game of business, trying to teach people numbers just so that they understand them, so they become, I suppose, less emotional.
Yeah, that's a good. That's a good point. And depending on where you're at in the country, I mean, the springtime can be, really emotional. Before we jumped on, I think, we were asking, hey, how are things going in your world? And you were asking the same of me. And last year at this time, we had warm weather in the Midwest in all of our markets, and we were just flying ahead of budget. So if you look at things year over year, and you just look at last year and say, well, where were we? Well, we're behind where we were last year. Well, how couldn't you be? We were out 4 or 5 weeks earlier. The math, that's just the way the math works. So one thing that I would offer when it comes to looking at finances and financial literacy, really you want to teach people to look at the long game, think about things in terms of percentages maybe, and instead of the aggregate dollars all the time. They seem to go ahead and help smooth the trends and make you less nervous about business. It keeps you from having those knee-jerk reactions, and I'm giving you some of the reasons why would you want to teach people about financial literacy. If you are looking at things always in some type of day to day and week to week cadence, and like if you fall down or you fall behind, that you have to make everything up in 1 week or by the end of the month, I think you'll drive yourself insane. You've got to be able to go ahead and take a look at the long game and say, all right, so yeah, we're behind right now in March a little bit, but how are our leads? How are our leading indicators? Right. So that's not something that if you walk in off the street at 22, 23 years old, that most businesses are going to go ahead and sit down and say, well, how many leads do we need to have this year to go ahead and produce this many sales, to produce this many dollars? And what are we using? Robert doesn't know when the next $600,000 landscape sale is going to come in. He doesn't know how many 18,000 square foot turf accounts we're going to get or 5,000 square foot turf accounts. But what he can tell you is that based on these, billions of dollars of aggregate dollars that he is studying, he can go ahead and give you a cadence of here's a percentage of how this would work. And maybe here's an average dollar value of how this would work. So there's really something about understanding the finances over a long term, over a long window can bring a calm to an organization, which really helps you make better decisions, right? You talk about the emotion in all of this, and how do you go ahead and take the emotion out of it? One, you look at the long game. You give credit to Ray Dalio, right? His principles in the book, and like everything is just another one of those. Like there is nothing that Robert or Chuck is going to wake up tomorrow and deal with that hasn't happened a million times before, especially in our industry. I mean, right? So it's just it's the same thing. How do you deal with it? Well, the first thing is try not to get overly emotional about it. So I think that's one thing that financial literacy really does for people. Hopefully it helps them not have a knee-jerk reaction. Now, do we study those numbers on a weekly basis? Yes. Do we look at some daily report? Yes. Good information.
A great book, by the way, the Ray Dalio book. If somebody hasn't read that, I'll definitely pick that up and read it.
You've got to be willing to stay in it, don't you, though? You don't read it in one night.
No.
Yeah.
It's definitely a long book and a lot of tough reading, but a lot of great nuggets in there. One of the things you mentioned earlier is just, the leadership piece, using the data ahead of you, trying to steer the ship. You talked about taking over from Larry, how he'd built the company. One of the things I talked about today with my team is, CEOs or owners, they have to show a good face for their employees because they're leading other people. They've got to show that confidence. They've got to show where the company's going and take them through some of those tough challenges. But, when you're effectively taking over the reins from somebody who's built a great company, you're probably nervous going into it, but how do you navigate that type of scenario?
A lot of praying, Robert. A lot of praying. That's what it is. I learned that. That's something else that Larry did well. So I'll keep doing that. But that's not it. I don't think that's going to get you through the entire thing. You try to surround yourself with good people, and you look around the team and you look at people's strengths and what do they do well, and you try to help them do as much of many of the things that they do well, and you try to help them do that as many times as possible, right? And that increases the velocity and speed of the flywheel. And so that's my number one job, taken over from Larry, is to just, look where we're at as far as personnel, try to see where do we want to go, look at the structure of the organization. Does it match where we want to go? And then fill the voids that we don't have and really try to encourage the people to use their talents. You try to get, if people are struggling with what they're doing, again, do their talents match? And really at the end of the day, they probably don't. And they're probably not even enjoying what they're doing that much. So that's probably the most important thing you can do is provide some calm guidance, make sure you've got the right structure for the organization, and everything. Try to look at everything as an opportunity. And not everything is something to be solved, right? Everything is on a continuum to be managed. Is that, you read that plenty of times. So I've taken that to heart. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to solve this problem. The pendulum will swing the other way. Just wait 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, 50 years, whatever it is, and the pendulum will swing the other way. So try to manage in that calm space. But yeah, Larry, he's still in the speaking circuit. He is an industry legend. Very few people talk about lifting the industry up more than Larry Ryan, and that he came into this industry saying that no, this is a group of professionals, and we're going to treat our people as professionals, and we want our clients to treat our people as professionals, and we want to pay our people a different way. We want to give them a stake in the outcome and the ownership. We want to take care of them as far as health and dental benefits, retirement benefits, short-term disability. We want to give them a generous chunk of paid time off to start, holidays and all. And he is always, that's what he saw for our industry. And I would say in that case, unique is maybe not the right word, but truly unusual. So for me, to follow Larry, it's big shoes. It's an honor and it's an opportunity.
How much time do you feel as though, when you talk about putting the right people on the bus and putting them in the right seats, how much time do you feel as though you're actually spending now coaching your team, just making sure they're doing the right things?
So right now, just taking over, I'm really on a listening tour. So we've got 8, including Kansas City. We've got 8 locations, and within Kansas City itself, we have 7 or 8 structures where larger departments live, because about 60% of our revenues in the Kansas City market. So I have been spending my time with departments and people in Kansas City. And I've been spending time out in the branches with their leadership teams and their department managers, and really just sitting around the table in Q&A sessions and say, all right, what's on your mind? What kind of questions do you have? Is anything making you nervous? And let them go ahead and hit me with questions. I tell them, I'll tell you absolutely, everything I can. If there's things that I just haven't figured out yet, or I really don't know the answer, or maybe I know it, but it hasn't been shared with the people in the right order yet, then I'll tell you that. And so it's really trying to, I'm lucky. I've been here 3 years. I didn't walk in as a cold off the street CEO. So I've got some relationships built, but it is important to go out and listen and just take the temperature of everybody. After I do that, probably mid-April, May, take a breather and really, hey, what have I heard? And you hope that probably in the first 6 months to a year that all the significant structure changes will be made. And if we've got holes that we need to fill for the road ahead, and whatever that march is going to be, going from 100 million to $500 million, you try to go ahead and get it set up so it's a little bit, okay, here's a seat, we can go ahead and fill it now, but we know what the structure looks like. So 6 months to a year is what I would think.
Okay, awesome. That's great feedback. How do people, if they're interested after listening to this, they want to consider doing an ESOP, what's the best way for them to maybe start that journey?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So there are some great resources out there, and always, one is you can reach out to me. And that won't be a problem. And I can go ahead and steer you in the right direction. So that's an easy one. You can reach out to myself or Larry or Roy Heinbach, our CFO here. The NCEO is a exceptional resource, and they've been around for quite a while. And so that would be my number one place to go if you want to go ahead and just hit that on the internet. You can find them, and they're an outstanding resource. They'll have multiple conferences per year. Attend one of those conferences. I did that before joining Ryan Lawn and Tree, and you will meet all the players. Everyone is there who you would ever need to put together an ESOP. The breakout sessions are very, very well done. You'll have your trustees, you'll have your banks, you'll have your current ESOPs, you'll have people telling you, here's what you want an ESOP committee to look like, here's what the transaction looks like, all the pitfalls. So NCEO is a great resource.
Okay, awesome. Chuck, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Some great nuggets, some great knowledge coming from you. Really appreciate your time today. So thank you for joining the show.
Thanks for what you're doing for the industry, Robert. It's great, and congratulations on your continued work, and provides the industry a great deal of value when you can bring companies together to share their knowledge and learn from their mistakes. Let's try to keep each other from making the same mistakes over and over. So thank you
for sure. No, you're welcome. Let's stay in touch, and then let's get you maybe back on in another 6 months and just give us an update on how you're progressing.
That sounds great. Thanks, Robert.
Cool. Thanks, Chuck. Take care. That's a wrap for today's episode of the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. I hope you're walking away with some great nuggets that you can immediately apply to your business, whether you're in leadership, operations, or you just want to show up every day with that Ironman mindset. Remember, growth doesn't happen by accident. It happens with intentional moves, bold conversations, and surround yourself with the right people. If you found value today, subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with others. And again, don't forget to check out Wilson-360.com. We have digital courses from account management, operational excellence, leadership development, or some of the other coaching packages we offer. Anyway, huge shout out to our sponsors. Thank you very much. And I'll leave with this. Have a pure, dead, brilliant day.